Howdy, it's Brian Avery again. Today we're going to talk about tar pitch and turpentine. We're going to move on. We've been in the 1500s with Sir Walter Raleigh. We've been back to the Bible and the tar mentioned and pitch mentioned in the Bible. And today we're going to move up to 1700 in time period when England was building ships and they were at war with everybody. I want to welcome you first of all to North Carolina, and I want to thank you for watching these videos and ask you, if you wouldn't mind, please subscribe to them and hit like buttons if you see them or whatever. I make tar, I don't do computers. Okay, so next what we're going to talk about is 1700 England is building ships as hard as they can go. Okay, they've got a huge trading business. They're at war with the world basically, and they're getting all their naval stores. And the reason we call them naval stores is because they were mainly used to build ships, and then when you sailed in a ship across the ocean for months at a time, years at a time, you had to carry these naval stores in barrels in that ship so you could repair the ship along the way. Sometimes, it would spring a leak. You'd have to send somebody over the side to repair it. And so all these things led to the name naval stores because they were used on ships. Now, today, we're going to talk about England was getting their products from Sweden, Stockholm, Sweden. The Stockholm Tar Company in Sweden kind of had a monopoly on it. They were the big suppliers in the world, and they had trees over there similar to what we have here in the Longleaf Pine. And those trees, they harvested tar, pitch, and turpentine, and they made their tar and pitch in huge rock buildings. They had big ovens built out of rocks and bricks and stuff, and so that's what they used over there. It was a real clean operation. They would actually, I want to tell you about this tree, what they would actually do. They had used up most of the dead park pine, like we've been talking about, that was laying on the ground, the dead trees. And so they made a really clean tar by working the faces on the living trees with a tool similar to this called a hogal. This is for turpentining in America and in North Carolina. But they used a tool similar to this to take all the bark off this tree, like you see right here, all the way around this tree except for about that much on the north side. They left about 8 or 10 inches of bark, and that was enough to carry the water up the tree. Okay? Now in 1700, the war called the Great Northern War starts over there. Sweden, I guess, sends their men to fight instead of making tar and pitch. What happens to England is their supply is cut off, and all of a sudden they have no way to continue building as many ships because they don't have the products to sell them up with. And so by 1704, the situation gets bad enough that they have to look for another source. They remembered in 1584 when Sir Walter Raleigh had told them that the entire coast of the Carolinas was covered in the type tree you make pitch from. And these trees would live 100 years, 500 years, and they would fall to the ground, die, and their hearts would be left full of resin laying on the forest floor. So that meant the entire coast of the Carolinas was covered in this type tree right here, this type wood, which has the resin in it, which is used to make tar and pitch. So in 1705, the Parliament over there gets together and passes an act to create a bounty of 10 shillings a barrel to get tar makers interested in traveling to North Carolina or tar makers here interested in producing these products and shipping them to England. So this 10 shillings a barrel will pay the shipping cost probably back to England, so it gets tar makers excited about coming to North Carolina. And they come and help start our first town of Bath in 1705. In 1716, they opened the first port of Bath to ship these products to England for shipbuilding. Okay, but in the meantime, the ships are coming in, they're loading them up, but when they get here to America, they don't have these nice brick rock ovens to cook out tar in. They have to go back to the Greek and Roman methods, the early days of doing it in a tar pit or charcoal pit. And that's something of what we're going to cover right here today, okay? If you look right here, this is what they were gathering, and they said that you could fill an ox cart full of it in 10 square yards and sometimes in 10 square feet. That's how many of these tree hearts were laying in these woods. This is what they found when they came to America in 1705. These were laying everywhere. You can see the resin is running out of it where the sun got on it. Got it hot enough that this oleo resin left in these tree hearts just pours out when even the sun heat is enough to open the pores and cause it to come out. It melts at about 130 degrees, 140 degrees. This is tar. This is wood, tree heart, pine tree heart, longleaf pine tree heart. This is tar that you see right here running out of it already, and it hadn't even been heated. It was just laying out in the sun, okay? So they get here, 1705. They don't have any roads, no McDonald's, no hotels. They got sand, dirt, pine trees, pine tree hearts, and a little bit of clay. So the way they go back and get started making tar is the way they did in the Bible days, which was to dig out a big pit 20 to 30 feet across, 3 or 4 feet deep, and throw the dirt out on the sides as you see here. In the middle of that hole in there, they dug a ditch that went downhill. You wanted sloping ground, headed downhill, so that the tar will run downhill once it runs out of the wood. And they would dig a ditch in the bottom of this pit, and then down at the end of it, they're going to put a barrel in the ground at the end of the ditch. They're going to take clay and pack all over in that ditch and the floor of this mound, so that basically nothing, the sand won't get involved with the tar. The tar will run out on a solid floor, so it will run downhill down there to that barrel and run in the barrel, and where they're going to dip it out into other barrels. See where we've dug out like they dug out, okay? Ox carts full of this wood is brought to these pits and piled in it. These tree hearts, and it's stacked, and it's stacked, and it's stacked, and it's stacked, and it's stacked. It takes you 2 days to dig this, 2 days to fill it full of wood, another 2 days to throw green pine limbs all over the top of it, and take and dig this dirt you dug out and throw it back all on top of the wood, green limbs. You don't want fire to show through it. You don't want anything to burn outside the mound. So you're covering it with dirt and packing it into a mound 12 to 15 foot tall, 20 to 30 foot across. Then we're going up top and set fire to the lightwood, 12 feet in the air, 15 foot in the air. Then we're going to watch this 24 hours a day for 9 to 12 days. That fire up top will start burning down into the fat lightwood which will cause heat, cause an oven effect, which is going to cause the wood to sweat out this tar we've been showing you. The tar is going to run down the sides of this mound on these clay floors down to that ditch and run out the end downhill into a barrel where they're going to dip it out as pine tar. Once you've covered over all that fat lighter or heartwood out of the pines that was laying on the ground, your mound looks something similar to this. And of course, we go up here and they would cut a hole and set fire to it, and then you would shovel this dirt over any flames that arose out of the mound, and that had to be done 24 hours a day, completely, for 9 to 12 days. And when that tar has finished cooking, what you have inside that mound is a mound full of charcoal. And the runoff that ran down the ditch in the barrel is pine tar. The resin left in those tree hearts under that kind of heat will turn to pine tar. These are some long leaves we planted about 6 years ago. We're trying to bring a little bit of it back. The long leaves were, gone from this area for years and years. And now we're bringing some of it back by replanting the seedlings. And there's about 500 here in this field we planted about 6 years ago. And you can see the difference in the heights. You can see some of them jump quick, some of them get really tall, and some of them stay really short over the same amount of time. And the reason for that is a longleaf puts down a root system, and when that taproot gets to where it wants it, then it jumps up, and it varies from tree to tree. And that's why they didn't want to replant longleaves, and they replanted loblolly, because they grow in half the time. It takes 100 years for these trees to reach maturity, where your loblolly will, in half that amount of time, be able to cut timber in like 25 years. And so these, as you can see, after 6-7 years, they're still nowhere near the size you would need to start timbering, because they grow so slow. That's what makes them so strong, okay? You can see what I was talking about in the first 2 videos, that in these longleaf pine forests, these natural grasses grow, which attracted animals, okay, to the area to forage and eat all day long. And what most people don't know, we associate cattle ranching with out west, but the first cattle ranches were right here in the longleaf pine forest. In fact, the people out west copied the system we had on the East Coast underneath these longleaf pines. These grasses grew, you had wild hogs, you had cows, and your original cowboys were here working their cows and fencing them into these areas right here and rounding them up and bringing them up for slaughter. And so the longleaf pine forest supplied food for the deer, it supplied food for the wild hogs and the birds and animals. Everything came here. As you can see, this is how once it looked all up and down the East Coast, 90 million acres. But these trees would be 100 feet tall, but these grasses grow beneath them. Now we're getting in late April. You can see these long leaves and these candles that were solid white, look like candles from a distance, are starting to turn into the new growth. They'll start having these needles grow right here on these, all up and down here, okay? Up until about 50 years ago, the pine was cut in these lumber mills for people to build their homes out of. When you would cut into some heart pine, a lot of times this will happen. They wanted this heart pine because, like I said, bugs and beetles and termites won't eat it because of the resin And you can see right here where in the sun, these boards, the heat of the sun will open the pores and you'll see the resin slipping out of the wood, okay? Same thing here. This is pine tree heart. Okay, we're back here at the house, and I wanted to show you this post on a deck I built about 20 years ago. And this was cut close to the heart of a pine tree. And even though this is a treated post, you see the heart right in here, that red, and you can see that in the summertime, when the sun shines on it, the oleo resin runs out of this post right here beside the house. I've got two of them like this, but it's because it was cut so close to the heart, and this is tar that's running down this post. Now, that concludes this episode, but if you don't mind, if you can subscribe for us and hit like buttons and stuff, that makes people want to spread this thing.